Classics are not just old. If you look up the word classic in the dictionary, you will learn that it means a work classified as of the highest quality. In ancient times, when paper was a luxury and printing presses did not exist, preserving a book for future generations required immense effort and resources. The fact that we can still read texts written 2,000 years ago means that every single generation up to this day has judged them valuable enough to be transcribed by hand. China has long served as a cultural guide to other Asian societies. Ancient Chinese philosophers possessed deep insights into society and human nature, and their wisdom was distilled into simple, beautiful language. Today, modern science has finally begun to corroborate the intuition of these past great thinkers. What does the latest science reveal about the ancient wisdom found in Chinese classics?
In ancient times, people believed in supernatural entities in the heavens that punished and rewarded them. However, Sunzi, a philosopher of Confucianism in the late Warring States period, explicitly denied the existence of gods. For example, Sunzi argued that praying for rain never brought about rain, and human actions had nothing to do with the actual weather. It rains when it is meant to, regardless of whether or not we pray for it. However, he added that praying for rain is effective, not because it changes nature, but because it changes people. Recent psychological studies have proven that Shunzi was right. When people are in a crisis and have done everything practically within their power, they are most likely to resort to prayers, rituals, offerings to deities, consulting oracles, or performing magic. All of these measures are scientifically ineffective at producing the desired result. However, they can convince themselves that they aren't helpless. For ancient farmers, weather was a matter of survival, and the feeling of total powerlessness was unbearable. Even if there was no practical effect, taking some actions towards the critical issue could bring peace of mind. Shunzi implied that a wise leader has to know that gods are fictional. However, the leader also has to understand that people seek comfort in their belief in supernatural beings. Gods and heaven may not exist, but completely denying them is also irrational.
The principled person does not look around for good fortune, and heaven rewards contentment for that lack of concern. On the other hand, heaven gives misfortune to those obsessed with avoiding it. The latest findings from evolutionary psychology has shed new light on this quote from Vegetable Root Discourse, which was written in the Ming Dynasty. From an evolutionary perspective, happiness is not a permanent state we are meant to achieve, but a temporary tool designed to encourage survival and reproduction. Our physiological system is not programmed to keep us happy all the time. For example, evolution provided pleasant sensations during sexual activity to encourage reproduction, but it also programmed those feelings to quickly subside. If happiness lasted forever, our very happy ancestors would have lost the motivation to seek further opportunities to pass on their genes. If you go after these pleasant sensations as your main sources of happiness, they disappear as soon as you attain them, and you have to start all over again. The root of suffering is often this never-ending pursuit of happiness, which puts us in a constant state of tension, restlessness, and dissatisfaction. Even when you are feeling joy, you can still be plagued with the fear of losing it. Endless pursuit of happiness makes us exhausted and discontented. As indicated in Vegetable Root Discourse, only those who are indifferent to happiness can truly be happy. Sunzi is famous for claiming that human nature is evil. Unlike earlier philosophers, Sunzi argued that people are not inherently good, and one's goodness is the fruit of his or her learning and efforts. He believed that staying moral required overcoming our innate evilness, and his view coincides with the latest findings from neuroscience. The brain evolves by adding new parts on top of the older parts. The newest part of our brain is the neocortex, the organ of intelligence. Almost all the intellectual and rational capabilities are attributed to the neocortex, and it is this organ that reads or listens to this very sentence.
No matter how smart, Homo sapiens remain an animal species, and the old brain still controls the basic functions critical for survival and reproduction, such as breathing, eating, sex, and reflex reactions. The neocortex is in a challenging position because it does not connect directly to the muscles. It must send signals to the old brain to move the body. For example, while the neocortex can temporarily override functions like breathing when you hold your breath, the old brain will eventually take back control if it detects a lack of oxygen. Similarly, the old brain sometimes makes us violent, greedy, and selfish, even when the neocortex wants us to be nice and moral. Evolution preserved these tendencies because they were once helpful for propagating genes. Biologically speaking, our inherent nature can exhibit evilness, and staying good requires constant effort. Through learning and experiences, we have to cultivate our empathy, give more strength to our conscience, and keep growing into better citizens. Sun Tzu's argument may sound pessimistic, but it rather reflects his hopeful view of humanity. He acknowledges that everyone has a potential to be good. Moreover, he implies that to learn, make an effort, and grow is not simply for one's own success and well-being, but also to remain a good person for others and the community. You have probably heard the story The Butterfly Dream by Zhuangzi, a Chinese philosopher who lived around the 4th century BC. One day, Zhuangzi dreamed that he was a butterfly flitting and fluttering about, happy with himself and doing as he pleased. He didn't know that he was Zhuangzi. Suddenly, he woke up, and there he was, solidly and unmistakably Zhuangzi. However, he could not tell if he was Zhuangzi who had dreamed that he was a butterfly, or a butterfly dreaming that he was Zhuangzi. What does this fable tell us? A neuroscientist may take it as an exposition of how unreliable our perception is. The latest findings from neuroscience have shown that the world we think we see is not the real world, but merely a simulation of the real world in our brain. We perceive the model of the world, not the world itself. For example, when you see a tree, you are not actually perceiving the real tree. You are seeing a three-dimensional model constructed by your brain. The brain gets inputs from its sensory organs, such as the eyes, processes that information, and then activates neurons to form a model. Therefore, when you comprehend the world out there, you are not really perceiving the world out there. You are constructing a representation of the world within your brain. Similarly, when you perceive yourself as a human lying on a bed, your brain has created a three-dimensional model of your room and bed and located yourself on the bed. If the brain were to accidentally construct a model of a flower garden and locate your consciousness above the blossoms, you would identify yourself as a butterfly. Zhuangzi intuitively understood that his perceived reality was just a created illusion. He somehow knew that we had no way to tell whether the model in our brain accurately reflects the world outside.